Welcome back to Monkeynomics. Now this is going to be kind of a unique video. So as a bit of backstory, a while ago, CS MGTOW, No Holds Barred, and myself were going to have a podcast where we discussed and debated different economic and civilizational models. Now I was supposed to present the case for the free market or laissez-faire capitalism. No Holds Barred was going to represent the resource-based economy, and CS MGTOW was going to represent something called scientific meritocracy. So unfortunately, we just couldn't get the podcast to sync up based on our schedules. Anyway, so rather than have that podcast, we're just going to kind of do videos about our case and then respond to them and so forth. So I'll include links to No Holds Barred and CS MGTOW's videos in this description when they become available if you want to follow the discussion. So this video is going to be about my case for the free market or laissez-faire capitalism. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I talked about this in my video, The Anarchist Challenge, because there are limitations to anarchy. The reason why I believe the free market or laissez-faire capitalism is superior to all other models, even hypothetical models. I don't even know a lot about this whole scientific meritocracy thing, but I already know it's superior. And the reason why is because distributed power. This is the concept behind the branches of government. Like in the US, you're supposed to have the legislative, the executive, the judicial branches. We're supposed to check and balance each other. Because if all the power is centralized, you have corruption. Now, over time, in the name of efficiency or whatever, the executive has been propped up and power has been slowly taken away from the legislature because, it's inefficient. They want more power to be centralized because that gets shit done. And you can see that as powers become more centralized, corruption has increased. The way to prevent corruption is to keep power distributed to as wide a body as possible. Now, in the US, it was supposed to be distributed among 3 branches of government. But in the free market, it's distributed across everybody. Now, some people have more influence than others, but they don't have a monopoly on force or power. A cartel can form, but they still have to worry about competition. They can't pass a law and force people to, do what they say. People can do what the fuck they want. And as long as they can do that, they'll never actually control anything. They still have to worry about potential competition. So let's say, a Walmart moves in, puts out all the other businesses. You had maybe a dozen or so mom and pop shops. Well, the Walmart moves in, all those businesses close down. The Walmart is now the main grocery store, the main electronics store, the main clothing store, the main everything. They have a functional monopoly in that area. They still have to keep their prices down. Because if they raise their prices, someone else is going to start a competing business. And you also see other companies, like Best Buy and so forth. They don't compete with Walmart in every department. They compete in a specific department, like Best Buy sells electronics. So they can't compete with Walmart in terms of clothing or groceries, but they offer more selection and stuff like that on electronics. So people shop at Best Buy if they want greater variety and more choice in regards to electronics than Walmart. But Walmart and Best Buy still have to compete on price, because if they don't, another person might enter the market to try to undercut them and steal market share. This is the essence of capitalism, supply and demand. If you read F.A. Hayek, he talked about the presumption of knowledge and the fatal conceit, where these economic planners think they know better than the free market. Or, for the most part, they actually know they don't know better than the free market, but they have a plan, and the free market isn't efficient, because they want to take a lot of money and they want to do something, and the free market doesn't want that. The government can't rely on actually selling you a good idea, because it doesn't have any. It relies on forcing you into doing what it thinks is in your best interest with your money. Now, truth be told, a lot of people are fucking stupid. And if left to their own devices, they would just fucking eat shit and die. But I'm okay with that. I'm all about natural selection. We need to stop helping the retards survive and reproduce. The government needs these voters. They need people. So even if they're fucking retards, they want them to survive and reproduce and vote for them. So unfortunately, you have these groups that, due to the nature of democracy and government, want to keep the retards alive, want to help them reproduce, which is very unfortunate for society. But in a free market, without all these government programs to keep these idiots alive, we would be better off. Now, again, I'm not talking about rounding anyone up and killing them. I'm not talking about eugenics. I'm just talking about letting nature take its course. And in a free market, that's what you get. There's a lot of creative destruction. There's a lot of winners and losers. There are always going to be more losers than winners in life. And that's okay. And if you're a loser, you need to figure shit out or go away. And if you go away, we're all going to be better off because, the world doesn't need more losers. And that sounds heartless, but it's just nature. When a tsunami comes in and wipes out a town, that's just nature. It's not evil, it just is. And this is probably the big point I want to make about the free market. So the big difference between the free market and any other planned economy, whether you're talking about communism or the resource-based economy or whatever scientific meritocracy is, I have a feeling that even scientific meritocracy is some sort of planned economy, where the idea is to get some sort of like program or philosopher king to make the decisions about what's right. The biggest problem about these planned systems is that you can't make nature fair. Nature is inherently unfair. It is inherently unequal. So what do you do about it? Well, in a free market, you just shrug your shoulders and be like, that's life. That's nature. Shit happens. People are okay with that. They understand that life isn't fair. They understand that nature isn't fair. They understand that there are winners and losers in life. But nobody consciously did that to you. It's just nature. If you're dealt a shitty hand genetically, or you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, shit happens. You can shake your fist at the air or blame Hanuman or whatever, I don't know. But people understand and appreciate that shit happens and life isn't fair. In any sort of planned economy, you still have the same inequalities, you still have the same general unfairness of the situation because people aren't born equal, life isn't fair. But now you have conscious thinking people behind the scenes redistributing the misery. You're dealt a shitty hand, and so the government swoops in and it plucks you up and says, oh, we're not going to let anything bad happen to you. But then it has to swoop in to someone who was dealt a good hand and fuck them over. Say, oh, we're going to take your money because we got to help these people over here. So you're not eliminating the misery. You're not eliminating the problem. You're just spreading it around. You're making it balanced. Which some people are like, that's good. You know, if you're dealt a good hand, you should pay more. If you're dealt a shitty hand, you should be helped or something like that. That is a moral judgment. And there are no morals in nature. And moral judgments can be weighed based on their results. And you can see in things like communism how this shit doesn't work. So when people talk about creating a better society or a better economic or social model and everything could be fair and equal, they're lying. Because nature is not fair or equal. So what they're really talking about is making things balanced. Taking from those who have and giving to those who have not. Which is great for those who have not. It's not so great for those who have. And that's not fair to them. They didn't do anything. Why are you taking their shit? Oh, because you don't remember. I don't give a fuck. They earned that. They worked hard for that. Or even if they didn't. Maybe they just happened to be in a place with a lot of natural resources. Like, you know, the people in the Middle East, like the Saudis and stuff like that, they have all this oil and they're all fucking rich as shit. You know, when they settled in that area in Arabia, they didn't know all that oil was there. They had no idea the wealth that would come from oil hundreds of years later. They had no concept. Just luck of the draw. Well, there you go. Fuck it. Life's not fair. Now, Thomas Sowell made this point in a video where he talked about how beachfront property is desirable by everyone. But there's just too many people, and there's not enough beach for everyone to have beachfront property. So what do? Well, you can have a free market where people sell the property for money. Now, who all gets the property initially? Who fucking cares? Whoever claims it and fights other people for it claims it first. But once they have it, they can sell it for whoever wants it. And the price for beachfront property is vastly higher than non-beachfront property because people want beachfront property. But let's say we got rid of that system. Let's say we got rid of the free market and we decided we were going to just give everybody beachfront property. But the problem we would run into is there's not enough beach to go around. So now what do? Well, in the absence of a market, in the absence of using the price system and free exchange, we would have to be completely arbitrary. We would have to set up some sort of lottery where we just gave the beachfront property to whoever's name was drawn out of a hat. Or more likely, the people in control, the government, would just take the beachfront property for themselves. And they give it to their buddies or something like that. You would have corruption. When you eliminate the free market, when you try to fix the unfairness and inequality of nature, you inevitably come to corrupt ends. People can appreciate that life isn't fair when it's nature. People will not appreciate when it is a person fucking them over to hook up someone else. You know, your family being poor, nobody made your family poor. Your family's poor because of whatever, X, Y, and Z. But if someone swooped in and made your family poor, if the government passed a law and took all your money, now this isn't sometimes life's like that. No, this is like this guy, this government, this fucking retard took my money and made my family poor. Now I want to get that guy. See, I can't get nature. I can't blame nature for the inequalities and unfairness of life. But if the government fucks me over, if the government ruins my life, I'm fucking pissed. And because you can't solve the inequalities and unfairness of nature, you can only spread it around. The people who will inevitably get fucked over get fucking pissed. And you end up just getting a very resentful class of people who are getting exploited, who eventually rebel against the system. Okay, so CS sent me a list of things he wanted me to talk about in our podcast, so I'm just going to answer those now. First thing, he wants to talk about male unemployment levels. Well, in a free market, there would be no unemployment. Because if you didn't work, you didn't eat. So you would either have a job or you would starve to death. Now you'd be like, oh my God, what if you can't find a job? You're going to die. Not really, because you could find work. In the free market, there wouldn't be a minimum wage. There wouldn't be the need to have all these licenses and so forth. I mean, you would still have laws against violence and fraud and so forth, but you wouldn't have all these laws requiring you to jump through all these hoops to get a job. You could just walk to an employer and be like, hey, can I get a job? I'd like to do this. I can do this, and this is what I'd like. And the guy could be like, no, I don't need you. Or, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Here's some money. Go ahead and do that. Or you could just start your own company. You can be like, hey, you need me to do this? I mean, people do this all the time. I used to work in an office where I'd run the McDonald's. I'm like, hey, I'll run the McDonald's if you pay. So people would give me money. I'd run the McDonald's, bring them food back, and then I'd keep the change. And I would make like $15 a day. They'd order, some food that would cost like $3 or $4, but they'd give me $5 and tell me to keep the change. And I'd do that for like 10 or so people, come back with like an armful of food, and I'd make $15 in like an hour. Just cash, tax-free. Great. You can find a job. You can create a job in a free market very, very easily. You just find someone who has something you want, ask them what they want for it, what you can do to acquire it, and then do it. If you have something they want, great. If you have some kind of labor you can perform for them, great. Whatever. Unemployment would be zero. And people who were unemployed would figure shit out, or they would starve to death. Okay, next one is gender pair bonding dynamics that result from the social system in question. All right, so this is actually very easy. So in a free market, you have competition and you have uncertainty. And with that comes appreciation for men. In a free market, where you don't have the government backing you up, women need men to survive. So because there's competition, because there's uncertainty, women are going to appreciate men who can provide and protect them. So women are going to be very appreciative of men in this environment. So gender dynamics are going to be very good. Women are going to be very sweet and demure in this environment because without men, they're going to starve to death. And you can see this with the chimpanzees and the bonobos, our old friends. So chimpanzees have to worry about predators, like gorillas and stuff like that. They have to compete for resources, so they're very patriarchal. They don't put up with women's shit. Whereas bonobos live in this part of the Congo where they have no predators, and the river provides for all their needs, and so they just lay around and have sex, and the women dominate the men. When your needs are provided for and you don't have to work for it, the females start dominating. When there are threats, when resources are not guaranteed and you have to compete for them, the men dominate. So in an environment with competition like a free market, you're going to have male domination rather than female domination, or a patriarchy rather than feminism. All right, number 3, male life expectancy and suicide rates. Suicide rates might be higher because of the competition. The men who can't compete and find themselves up against the wall may just choose to take their own life. So suicide rates might be higher. Male life expectancy would be about the same. I mean, that's all based on technology. So if you have the money, if you win the game of competition, you're going to have a lot of money in a free market. And so you're going to be able to afford a longer life expectancy. But I would imagine that suicide would probably be higher because you don't have these safety nets. So right now, if you fall on hard times, you have the government and all these other safety nets around you to catch you when you fall. But in a completely free market, when you're just completely SOL, you may just be like, fuck this, and just decide to take it out. All right, number 4, misandry. Well, again, like I said previously, in an environment of risk, in an environment of threat, in an environment of uncertainty, men are appreciated. So you notice, like, after World War II, during the Cold War, for about 10 years, there really wasn't a lot of misandry. It was like the golden age of traditionalism. Well, then started in the 60s, there's a lot of social reforms, gave women more authority and power and egalitarianism and blah, 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 and then the misandry started ramping up. This would still be a product of male disposability because men are expected to do, whereas women are just expected to exist, but that's just part of nature. you wouldn't have this misandry where men are just shit on by society. All right, number 5, male versus male competition, positive or negative. Competition would be fierce. You would have so much male competition, it would be outstanding. Now, I don't think male competition is a bad thing because it's how evolution works. The free market is based on nature. It's based on evolution. With survival of the fittest, you have winners and losers. You have the people who survive because they were fitter, and then you have people who die. And it's not cruel, it's just nature. In order to have evolution, the strong and the fit need to reproduce, and the unfit need to die out. If you keep the unfit alive, you're actually stagnating evolution. But how do you determine who's fit? How do you determine, who's the strongest? Well, you have what's called competition. So male versus male competition isn't bad. It's just natural. This is why nature made men able to reproduce with multiple women, but not the other way around. We are inherently disposable. We are designed to compete with other men and acquire, resources and women because of those resources. I mean, this is why hypergamy and all those things exist. On a whole, men as a whole, obviously, again, there's more losers than winners. It's not good for the majority of men, competition, because most men will lose that competition. But that's okay. Because think about it. Now, for those individual men, that fucking sucks. Now, think about this. Let's think big picture here. As an individual man, if you're dealt a shitty genetic hand, that fucking sucks for you. Because you have no chance of reproducing. If you have physical or mental disabilities, you may not be able to compete and feed yourself. You may be completely dependent on others, or you may just starve to death in the street. And that fucking sucks. So, now let's think big picture. Let's step back. Instead of focusing on the individual man, let's look at men or humanity as a whole. How do we solve this problem? Well, ideally, we want to eliminate the genes which create this man that's dealt this shitty genetic hand. If we eliminate those genes, if we improve the genetic pool, if we cause humanity to evolve, then those men wouldn't be born anymore. Men would be born with greater capabilities. We would have a better human race. So how do we do that? Unfortunately, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. We have to allow the unfit to die. We have to have the fit reproduce in order to create a better human race. And I know people are like, oh my God, he's a Nazi. No, I'm not talking about killing anyone. I'm just talking about letting nature take its course. Just like, Batman said in Batman Begins, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. Whoosh, I'm Batman. But anyway, that's the point. So male versus male competition is bad on an individual level, but it's fantastic for evolution. It is the basis of evolution. Without competition, without survival of the fittest, without the fit reproducing and the unfit dying, you don't have evolution. You either kind of just let nature work or you try to stop it. But there are consequences for halting or retarding nature, like feminism, egalitarianism. These are all attempts to fix quote-unquote nature, and there are consequences for that. So number 6 is other trade-offs from the system in question. Again, it's very unfair. It is very unequal, and that's fine. The last point I want to make about the free market is it's not perfect at all. But when you look at the actual viable alternatives, it destroys the competition. I mean, we could talk about all these utopian perfect scenarios involving robots and computers and, philosopher kings, but they're not viable. This is all pie in the sky bullshit. When you look at actual systems which work and incorporate human nature, the free market or laissez-faire capitalism has better outcomes for more people. And that's really what you want to look at. Now, and I just talked about earlier how there's more losers than winners. But because the winners have the resources and they drive society, you're going to have a better society. There's still going to be people who fall off, but that's fine because the society is going to improve over time because of survival of the fittest and evolution. So you just have to decide, what kind of society do you want? Do you want a society that's moving forward, or do you want a society that's moving backwards? Now, I know like leftists and stuff like that talk about like, we're moving forward, it's 2016, brr. But I'm talking about evolution. Clearly, leftists who believe in a massive redistributive welfare state and gynocentrism are not moving forwards when it comes to evolution. We're not creating a better humanity. when we're causing people who are unfit to reproduce more than the good people. I mean, there's people you want reproducing, and they're not reproducing because they're being taxed out the ass. And the people you don't want reproducing, you're giving money for them to reproduce more. It's fucking retarded. It's going to destroy society, and it is destroying society. And clearly, that's probably not what people want. That wasn't what they intended, but that is the result of trying to make this fair and equal system, because nature is not fair or equal. So you can either embrace that, work within that system, because that is nature. That is what the system we're left with until we can control, until we can rewrite nature. These are the rules. And when we try to go against that, there are consequences. So any sort of planned economy is going to have downsides, which vastly outweigh the upsides, and only benefits the people you don't really want to be benefiting. When you have a planned economy that takes from the producers and gives to the leeches and the parasites, you're not going to have a good society. You're going to have a fucking shitty one. And the reason should be obvious, because you're retarding evolution. You're causing the people you don't want reproducing to reproduce more, and you're causing people you should want reproducing more to reproduce less. So over time, you're going to create this fucking retarded society. So that's my spiel. Hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to hearing No Holds Barred and CS MGTOW's responses, and I'll keep you abreast. Again, I'll post links to their responses in the description. Keep the conversation going. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.